Girls?
Yes, master?
Do you want to hear a terrible tale, a shocking one, a dastardly one?
Oh, yes, master, yes. Yes, please, master.
Well, you sparehead.
I'd like to hear one.
Okay. It's going to be a terrible, terrible tale.
Ooh, is it one of terrible crimes?
Yeah.
Oh, master, who committed these terrible crimes? Da, da, da.
The police.
Sorry?
The police.
You confused me, master.
Okay, well, it wasn't just them, but they're guilty at the very least of absolutely disgraceful incompetence, and I would argue criminal misconduct in a public office in this particular story. But there's also a serial killer involved as well.
Oh, I like serial killers.
Then you're a weirdo. Okay, well, I think with this one,
Master, before we start, do you like the police?
not really.
Why not, master?
No reason.
Master, haven't you been arrested before?
Totally irrelevant.
Yeah, but just humorous, master.
All right, maybe.
More than once?
Doesn't matter. Let's go on with the story.
Master, why were you arrested?
It was unjust and it's irrelevant to the story. Anyway, let's get on with it. Okay, let's start at the end.
Huh?
We'll start at the end. Okay, Plumstead in London, October 1993. The Bisset family, Samantha is a young mother, I think she's about 27, got a little toddler called Jasmine, lovely little girl.
Oh, I like little girls. They play with ours.
They do. Partner Conrad Ellis. Getting a little bit nervous though, because unfortunately, Samantha engages in some risky behaviour in that she parades around without her clothes on at times, with lights on and only net curtains there.
Oh, why'd she do that?
Apparently their house backed onto woods, or their flat, and she thought no one could see her, and unfortunately...
Someone was watching.
Yeah. And anyway, Conrad had looked out the window one day and he'd seen someone peeping from the woods.
Oh, a peeping pervert.
Yeah. Anyway, 2nd of November that night. 2nd of November. Conrad had been away. Samantha, Jasmine were there by themselves. They're there the 3rd as well. Conrad's still not home. And unfortunately, hop on to the next day, Conrad comes home the 4th of November, 93, and opens up the door, sees a red stain when he opens up the front door of the little flat there in Plumstead, a red stain on the carpet.
Oh, did somebody spill their drinky?
Well, that's what he thought, actually. So he went to get some cleaning fluids, had a little wipe, and then he thought, that's a bit weird. Why doesn't Samantha clean this up? That's not like her, leaving a red wine stain on the carpet in the doorway. So he went into the living room of their little flat, and then he saw the most terrible sight.
Oh no.
Yeah, unfortunately, Samantha had been attacked in the most horrible way. Now, she was partially covered with a duvet, so it seems Conrad didn't see the worst of it. But just to summarise, we won't go into details, obviously.
Oh, go into the details, master.
I'm not. She'd been attacked with a knife, stabbed around 70 times, almost Jack the Ripper style, by perhaps a paranoid schizophrenic. She'd been progressively dismantled and mutilated, her organs looked at. As to whether or not she was sexually assaulted, I don't believe that's been released to the public, but either way, terrible things were done to her with this knife. A lot of time had been spent there by this perverted attacker. Excuse me. Conrad took one look at her, obviously knew immediately she was dead. Then, as an afterthought almost, and he was guilty, he felt guilty, it was an afterthought, he suddenly thought Jasmine, the toddler, the little girl. And he went upstairs to where she must have been put to sleep in her bed, looked at her, And unfortunately, and this is the worst thing of it all,
What's the worst thing?
the toddler had been attacked. And I'll use that word, but I think we all know what it means. And she'd been smothered with a pillow.
Oh, Master, that was an evil man.
It was. But why did I say the police are the villains of this story?
I don't know. Why would you say this? Actually, you hate the police, Master, because they arrested you.
No, it's because all of this was totally needless. Because this attacker should have been put away in 1989.
Oh. What? Sorry?
Yeah, let's backtrack to 1989. Okay, 1989, Plumstead Common. Lady goes into the local Plumstead police station there and says, my son has just told me that he's, well, R to the A to the P to the E to the D. Is that how you spell it? I don't want to say it. He'd attacked a woman. And she goes in there, reports it to the police. Attacks someone, you know. He's told me he's done this to a woman on the common. Police get up their computer there, on the computer. What do you think the computer said?
Oh, no. He says, nothing happened like that on the common, Master.
Yeah. Of course, the policeman didn't think to actually look around the common at the houses that backed onto the common. What he'd actually done, he'd been a peeping Tom for a long time, this dude. He'd been peeping from the common. He'd been peeping into people's houses looking at women. And he'd been peeping into one lady's house. Tried the door. Door was open. Went in. This was breakfast time, mind you. Kiddies around the table eating their breakfast before school. Walked straight in there with a knife. Said, hey, do what I want or I'll harm your kids. What do you think the mother did?
She said, I will do whatever you want, Mr. Evil Attacker, because I love my kids.
Exactly. She was taken upstairs and attacked. And then he calmly walked out the door and said, you should lock your door. Which I guess was good advice. And I guess that's how criminals think. So if anyone ever listens to this, if anyone ever does, the advice here is...
lock your doors, everybody.
Yeah, because unfortunately there are people that will try them. Anyway, but he told his mum. And his mum goes... Mum kicked him out of the house for that. Because he'd been living at home. His mum kicked him out of the house. Went to the police, told them. Police officer couldn't be bothered, really, basically. Yeah, nothing happened on the common, mate. Yeah. Carried on eating his donuts.
Master, that's kind of like a rude stereotype of the police. Yes, we are the Carabinieri, and it is a very serious event, so insult the police, the Carabinieri.
Well, this is the Metropolitan Police, so go away, Mario. Now, do you think that was the first, or rather the last crime that he committed other than that murder?
Yes, he became a good and law-abiding and non-perverted citizen after that particular R to the A to P to the E.
No. They got progressively violent. So what he would do, he'd go out on the common and he'd look particularly for mothers with their children, because I think he knew that if there was a mother with a child, they were much less likely to fight back. They would just comply because they love their children. And so he began progressively getting more violent, attacking women. And when I say attacks, we all know what I mean. Attacking women on the common, particularly women with children usually. And this carried on, and this carried on, and this carried on.
Master, when did it stop?
It stopped subsequent to November 93, when the Bisset murder was solved, and this killer, we'll name him, Robert Napper, was finally apprehended. And we'll say now he was caught because of one fingerprint and great police work. But anyway, in between this, there was another terrible, terrible attack. It happened on the 15th of July, 1992.
Oh, I've heard of this one. That's Mistress Nickell with her little son.
Yeah, thankfully the son wasn't killed, but this was on Wimbledon Common. Rachel Nickell was there, going out for an early morning walk with her son, and she was attacked by this Napper dude, assaulted by him, and again attacked with a knife, stabbed many, many, many times, and murdered. Now, one of the problems with these particular attacks is that the killer, Napper, was somewhat impotent. So very often he exchanged violence, it seems, and use of a knife for actual sex because he couldn't maintain an erection.
Master, Bruni, children, could you not use words like that and say stuff like that?
Yeah, all right, okay, I'm getting a bit graphic, sorry. But yeah, there's very little DNA. Certainly in the Nickell crime, it took many, many years later, with the use of PCR and low copy number and techniques like this, to actually finally, put it to bed and nail him for that crime. Obviously, he'd been in Broadmoor for many years by this point. There's very, very little DNA. But, tracking back again, why do I say it's a story of gross police incompetence and corruption?
Oh, there you go again. Serious crime in Italy insulting the Carabinieri.
Yeah, all right. I say this because, firstly, the mother went into the police station and reported the attack. Police did nothing, just totally ignored it. But even more so now, they had a photo fit of this green chain, R to the A to the P to the I. This attacker. They had a photo fit of him. And so a couple of people have phoned in and said, hey, looks like this dude Napper, bit of a weirdo, bit of a loner, seems like knives, seems like guns. And he had a police record, been arrested for illegally owning a firearm and stuff like this. They knew of him. People were calling it in. Police thought, hey, better, do a little bit of work, one day. Let's do something other than arresting people for crimes on Twitter and such like. Sending out an offensive tweet. So the police thought there wasn't Twitter, I suppose, back then, was there? But I'm sure back then even petty nonsense was the main job of what the police did, because it's easy bust, isn't it? But anyway, we thought, no, let's do something. So they went round to his house, and they said, yo, Napper, you better come in for a DNA test, mate, because, you've been called up, people are saying that you look like this attacker, Obviously, he seemed like a nice chap. I spoke to him for 10 minutes. Didn't seem like the type. Quite polite, actually. Seemed quite intelligent. And so, so they said, come in for a DNA test, please. Of course, he didn't. Didn't want to get caught. We should say with these attacks, although I said that he left very little DNA, some of them he did. At least 3, because he was eventually convicted of those. But there was DNA, and even we're talking here, about 1990. So DNA was fairly new. You need like a 50p size, amount of DNA, about amount of bodily fluid containing DNA to get a sample. But they had this, so a DNA test would have done the job. Anyway, they noticed a few weeks later he's not coming. We suppose we better chase this one up, haven't we? So give him a ring, knock on his door, I can't remember which, and said, "Oh, Napper, you need to come in for a DNA test, mate." Obviously, what do you think he did, girls?
I'm sure he went in and said, please, Master Policeman, do my DNA.
No, he didn't bother again. And at this point, the police could have thought, well, this is a little bit suspicious here. He looks like the photo fit. He's ducked 2 DNA tests. We've got dozens of women now being attacked with a knife in front of children. The most brutal, violent, disgusting attacks. Do you think the police chased it up, thinking we got a real suspect here?
Yes, Master. I'm sure they sent in the flying squad to arrest him.
I wish I could say that they did, but they thought, well, it's a bit of hassle doing all that. So let's see if we can exclude him. There must be some way to exclude him rather than, don't want to waste our time going around his house or anything. So some of the women have said, yeah, he's about 6 foot, this attacker. Yeah, about 6 foot, roughly. Yeah, I guess he's about 6 foot. How tall was Napper?
I'm guessing not 6 foot.
No, he was 6'2". Now, we're talking about estimated heights here. So should the police really rely on an estimate of about 6 foot to exclude someone that's 6'2", who's ducked 2 DNA tests and looks like the photo fit and, has previous offences? Is that reasonable?
It's just very reasonable. Italy will be excluded right away. We only have the mafia in Italy.
Okay, thank you, Mario. Either way, this most disgraceful and incompetent example of police work they excluded him because of his height. When, after everything I've already said, I won't repeat it, absolutely outrageous. But then, of course, let's move on to the Rachel Nickell crime. So we've already talked about this. Terrible stabbing, Wimbledon Common, July 1992. Lack of forensics at the time. So they didn't really know what to do. So they called in a profiler, a dude named Paul Britton. Now, how do you think they train profilers in England? Or at least how do you think they trained them back then? What are Paul Britton's qualifications?
I'm sure he was a very senior investigating officer who had subsequently done a criminology degree, maybe a psychology degree, maybe a doctorate in all these kinds of things.
Yeah, that would have been good, wouldn't it? Well, in Italy, how do they train them there, Mario?
In the carabinieri, you get them to roll some pasta, make some carbonari, and if it's good, we qualify them at once. Yes, pronto.
Okay. Well, in America, what the FBI do, their behavioural analysis unit, or whatever they call it nowadays, you only recruit people who are very experienced police officers, experienced in investigating crimes. So this is the first thing. It's people that have a great deal of crime scene experience. And then on top of that, they build in all the psychological training. And so they're looking for clues at the crime scene that can indicate the state of mind of the person and maybe help them have an idea of who the perpetrator might be. But couldn't that be used to single out an individual person? You know, can it be used to totally eliminate people, rule one person in?
I'm guessing, yes, definitely. These wonderful profiles, they can be like, yeah, crack the case.
No. It's used just to narrow down the field a bit, yeah. Narrow down the field. You've got 10,000 suspects. You can use the profile to narrow it down to, I don't know, maybe a few hundred. That type of thing. It can't be used for exclusion and inclusion, really. It's just a guide. But the problem was, Britain dude comes in, and he says, well, it's a loner, obviously a bit of a pervert's done this, maybe someone that likes the occult. If people are into the occult, they're obviously weird. So maybe someone like that could have done it. And unfortunately, there was someone like that on the common that day. His name was Colin Stagg. Colin Stagg had been out that morning walking his dog. And he'd wandered up to the policeman, sort of guarding the common, and he'd said, hey, what's going on here, mate? And the policeman said, ooh, something very bad's happened here, you can't go on the common. By the way, who are you? And he gave his name and address and all that. And then when the police were doing their calls, they obviously went to Stagg, asked him, did you see anything that day, anything suspicious upon the common? And, of course, he was in their computer at this point. In Holmes, isn't it? Home Office Large Major Inquiry System. He'd be in that. So when they're sort of sifting through it, remember what they were looking for?
A pervert. Oh, what is Colin Stagg a pervert?
Well, he had a conviction for nude sunbathing, so I don't know if that makes you a pervert or not. I mean, I wouldn't do it myself.
But that's because you've got a...
No, none of that. I wouldn't do it myself. But, yeah, apparently where he did it, it was quite common for people to sunbathe nude. So, no, I don't think it makes him pervert. And a previous occupant of his flat had been into the occult. So apparently there are still a few occultish items in the house.
Oh, that's a bad idea. I'd burn them. Get away those evil spirits.
I would too, actually. But that's another matter, maybe for another video. So they home in on Stagg for these reasons. He kind of looks a little bit like the E-Fit, to be fair. Sort of loner type. He's a bit of a weirdo, let's be fair. He comes across as a bit of a strange chap.
So do you, Master.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that might explain why I was arrested. Anyway, so they home in on him. Britain says him. They try and entrap him. They focus entirely on him, and it completely subverts the investigation. And even after the judge has thrown the case out of court, because Stagg was charged, he spent like a year on remand. Even after it was thrown out of court, the police said, well, you know, we're not going to be looking for anybody else.
Why was that, Master?
Because they couldn't be bothered. It was only years later when a new team finally discovered some forensic evidence. The young boy, the son that was with Rachel, the mum, he had been kind of grabbed by the hair and thrown to the ground. And so there was some DNA in his hair, I believe, and also some paint flecks that matched a toolbox that Napper had in his apartment. So, yeah, I think that's pretty much covered it.
Master, is there anything else you need to say on this matter of police corruption and incompetence?
Let me check my notes. So, yeah, should have been apprehended in 1989 when the mum phoned. Then a little later when he ducked the DNA tests. And then if they'd done a proper investigation into Nickell, maybe they'd have caught him. Maybe then, oh, there was one thing I meant to say, yeah. So, it was interesting, the Rachel Nickell case. What do we have here? Do we have any similarities between that and the Green Chain case? Now, it was different police sort of jurisdictions, but interestingly, the Green Chain police, incompetent as they were, they did phone the police that were investigating the Nickell murder. They said, hey, we've got a rapist. Ooh, I said the word, hopefully that doesn't trigger anything. We've got a dude here that's committing all these assaults in front of children with a knife. Now, that's very similar to the Nickell murder, don't you think, police? And what do you think the police said?
Thank you for the information. We shall look into this in great detail with an assiduous eye.
No, I wish they'd said that. They said, nah, we got a man, it's Stag. We know it's him. No evidence him, but we know it's him. So they brushed it off. Now, there was one person that was working on both the cases. Any guesses who that was?
Oh, was it the profile, the one trained by parts to the pizza?
Oh, I never actually said what his qualifications were. He had none. He was a psychologist working with mentally ill criminal patients. But as for crime scene, police investigations, this Paul Britton really had no qualifications in that regard, not as we would expect for a profiler today. At least allegedly, that is my belief. No one would be sued by Paul Britton. Think he's still alive. Although, frankly, I doubt he'd want to publicise his role in any of this because it's not very flattering. He was working across both the cases. So if anybody should have said, hey, this looks very much like the same attacker here, it should have been him if he was such an expert. And to be honest, I think of myself as a bit of a casual profiler myself, but I'd have spotted this. That type of attack, use of a knife, attacking women with their children. It's very obvious. How many people like that can there be in London? Let's be fair.
Probably several hundred knowing London.
No, this is very, very unusual. Incidentally, do you know how many attacks we're talking about here in the Green Chain series? And how long it went on for?
No.
Well, I think I told you before, it carried on until he was arrested. But we're talking about over 100 attacks here. This is an absolutely outrageous thing. So, yeah, to sum up, should have been intercepted there, should have investigated the Nickell crime properly, and then there's a chance he'd have been caught. But really, it was earlier on. It was those, yeah. Okay, I think we'll end it there, girls.
Yeah, you're starting to waffle.
Okay, thanks for your help, girls.
No problem, Master.
Thanks for your help, Mario. Not a great deal of help, but,
No problemo. Anytime, the Carabinieri is always there to help the Italian citizens.
Okay, thank you. Goodbye.